The city was still asleep before the first light of dawn. The streets were silent, the air was cold, and not a single bird had begun to sing. Right in the middle of the only road leading into town lay a massive stone, large enough to stop every traveler in their tracks. As the sun slowly rose, the road became busy. Merchants pushed their carts toward the market. Workers hurried to their jobs. Students walked with heavy bags on their shoulders. One after another, they reached the enormous stone. Most people stopped for only a moment. They stared at it with frustration, complained under their breath, and then carefully walked around it. Some blamed the city officials. Others blamed bad luck. Everyone believed that removing the stone was someone else's responsibility. Soon expensive cars arrived and turned back without hesitation. Delivery workers sighed as they searched for another route. An elderly man shook his head and muttered that the world was becoming more careless every day. Yet no one placed a single hand on the stone. Hours passed, and the obstacle remained exactly where it was. Hundreds of people had seen the problem, but not one had tried to solve it. Just before noon, a young man named Aryan approached the road. His clothes were simple, his shoes were worn, and a faded backpack rested on his shoulders. He was not rich, powerful, or famous. He was simply a hard-working young man trying to earn enough money to support his family. When Aryan saw the stone, he stopped. He looked at the people walking around it. He listened to their complaints. He quietly stepped closer to the stone. Without saying a single word, he stepped closer to the stone. He placed both hands against its rough surface, took a deep breath, and pushed with all the strength he had. The stone did not move. A few people laughed. Others smiled as if they already knew he would fail. But Aryan didn't walk away. He wiped the sweat from his forehead, adjusted his footing, and prepared to try again. Sometimes the biggest obstacle in life isn't the weight we carry. It's the voice that tells us to stop trying after the first failure. Aryan tightened his grip and pushed once more. Every muscle in his body trembled with effort, but the stone barely moved an inch. People passing by slowed down to watch. Some whispered to each other. Others laughed openly. "Why waste your time?" one man said. "You'll never move that thing by yourself." Aryan heard every word, but he refused to answer. His focus remained on the stone. He stepped back for a moment, breathing heavily. His hands were covered with dust, and a small cut had appeared on his palm. For a second, he thought about giving up. He had work to do. His family depended on him. Every minute he spent here meant less money for the day. Then he looked around. An elderly woman stood on one side of the road, unable to cross with her heavy basket. A father struggled to push his child's stroller around the obstacle. A delivery rider had already missed several customers because of the blocked road. At that moment, Aryan realized something. This stone wasn't only blocking his path, it was making life harder for everyone. He took a deep breath, planted his feet firmly on the ground, and pushed with everything he had. The stone shifted. Only a tiny movement. But it moved. Most people didn't even notice. Aryan did. That single inch changed everything. He smiled for the first time that day. Progress didn't have to be dramatic. Sometimes one small step was enough to prove that success was possible. The crowd became quieter. Some people stopped laughing. They watched more carefully now. Could he actually do it? Aryan wasn't thinking about winning anymore. He wasn't thinking about praise or rewards. His only goal was to move the stone just one more inch. Because he understood a truth that many people never learn. Great achievements are almost never finished in one giant leap. They are built through hundreds of small efforts that nobody notices. And sometimes, the smallest movement is the beginning of the biggest transformation.
For the next several minutes, Aryan kept pushing without saying a word. His breathing became heavier. Sweat rolled down his face and soaked his shirt. His arms burned with pain, but he refused to stop. The people around him watched in silence. The laughter that had filled the street only moments before had slowly disappeared. Now they were curious. Some wondered where he found the strength. Others wondered why he cared so much. Aryan wasn't trying to impress anyone. He simply couldn't accept walking away from a problem that could be solved. Again he pushed. The stone rolled forward another inch. Then another. The sound of rough stone scraping against the road echoed through the quiet street. For the first time that day, Hope spread through the crowd. A young boy stepped closer. "Do you need help?" he asked. Aryan smiled warmly. "Yes," he replied. The boy placed both hands against the stone. His strength was small, but his heart was strong. A few seconds later, an elderly man joined them. Then a delivery worker. Then another traveler. One by one, people who had spent the morning complaining finally decided to help. No one gave a speech. No one argued. They simply pushed together. With every effort, the stone moved farther from the center of the road. The task that had seemed impossible for one person became possible because several people chose to act together. Finally, with one last powerful push, the massive stone rolled completely onto the side of the road. The street became silent. Then suddenly, applause filled the air. People smiled at one another. Cars began moving again. Parents crossed the road safely with their children. Merchants continued toward the market. The road was open once more. As Aryan picked up his backpack and prepared to leave, he noticed something unusual beneath the place where the stone had rested. A small wooden box, covered with dust, almost hidden beneath the earth. Aryan slowly knelt beside the small wooden box. It looked old, weathered, and forgotten by time. The crowd gathered around him, watching in complete silence. Carefully, he brushed away the dust and lifted the lid. Inside, there was no gold. There were no precious jewels. There was only a folded letter and a small leather pouch. Aryan unfolded the letter with trembling hands. The paper had turned yellow with age, but the words were still clear. It read, "To the person who chose action over excuses. To the one who refused to walk away. This reward belongs to you." The crowd stared in disbelief. Moments earlier, many of them had walked past the same stone without giving it a second thought. Now they realized they had all missed the same opportunity. Aryan opened the leather pouch. Inside were several gold coins. But strangely, he didn't smile. Instead, he looked back at the road. The coins were valuable, but they were not the greatest reward he had received that day. For the first time in his life, he truly understood something. Every obstacle carries two choices: walk around it, or grow by moving it. The crowd remained silent. Many lowered their heads. They weren't thinking about the gold. They were thinking about the chances they had ignored because they believed someone else would take responsibility. Aryan carefully placed the letter back inside the box. He took only what had been left for the person who had earned it. Then he quietly picked up his backpack once again. Without asking for attention, without waiting for praise, he simply continued walking toward his destination. Days turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months. Life in the town returned to normal. The giant stone was gone, but the story of the young man who moved it was not forgotten. People began to see obstacles differently. Some started helping strangers without being asked. Neighbors worked together to fix broken paths. Shop owners cleaned the streets in front of their stores. One simple action had quietly inspired many others. As for Aryan, he never told anyone about the gold coins. He used them wisely to support his family and continued working just as hard as before. He never believed the reward had changed his life. His decision had. One evening, while walking home, Aryan passed the same road once again. He stopped for a moment and smiled. The road was clear. People moved freely. Children laughed as they ran across the street. No one remembered how heavy the stone had been. They only remembered that someone had cared enough to move it. Life will always place stones in your path. Some will be small. Some will seem impossible to move. You can complain. You can wait for someone else. Or you can take the first step. The first push may not move the stone. The second may barely make a difference. But every honest effort brings you closer to the life you want. The greatest opportunities are often hidden inside the problems that everyone else chooses to avoid. Because success doesn't belong to the strongest, it belongs to the people who refuse to stop trying. So the next time life places a stone in your road, don't ask, "Why is this happening to me?" Instead, ask, "What can this obstacle teach me?" you may discover that the obstacle standing in your way is actually the bridge leading you to the person you were meant to become. And remember, the stone was never the real challenge. The real challenge was deciding to move it.